Last week, the county tax collector was becoming your water district's bill collector. This week, 3 more basins made it official. You're listening to the Sigma Weekly, your 10-minute briefing on everything happening in California groundwater. Brought to you by water1.ai. I'm your AI host. Let's get into it. We covered 18 board meetings this week, and the biggest story isn't a new fee. It's where the old ones show up. In 3 basins at once, groundwater charges are moving off agency invoices and onto county property tax bills. Paso Robles area. Groundwater Authority approved putting its fiscal year 2026-27 sustainability fees on the San Luis Obispo County secured roll. Earliest collections could hit in October, but staff say December and April are more likely, because that's how the tax calendar works. East Turlock did something similar with unpaid fees. Of the 71 non-payment notices we told you about last week, staff expect roughly 50 accounts to end up on the county roll, and those are mostly smaller single-parcel landowners, not the big operations. And in Carpinteria, the Water District Board voted to place the Advanced Purification Project's capital charges on the Santa Barbara County roll over the objections of 11 speakers signed up against it and 16 written protests. Here's why this matters beyond the accounting. When a fee is an invoice, you can dispute it, you can be late on it, you can call the district. When it's on your property tax bill, it's secured against the land. Different leverage, different consequences. Several boards were candid that this is precisely the point. Collection rates go up. It's a hard trade, and nobody around those tables looked happy about it. Next up, Delta-Mendota has a subsidence problem measured in inches, and they're running out of them. Following up on the April INSAR figures we mentioned last week, the Coordination Committee put the same number in much starker terms. Maximum recorded subsidence in the sub-basin is now about 20 inches, measured since January of 2020. The limit they've set for the year 2040 is 24 inches. So they have roughly 4 inches left, and at the current rate, they could blow through it as early as mid-2028. That's a cushion that's supposed to last until 2040. And they're on pace to spend it in 2 years, 12 years ahead of schedule. Now, this one's interesting because it showed up somewhere new this week too. Over in the Cosumnes area, Omachumne Hartnell heard that new modeling picked up subsidence in the eastern part of the subbasin, less than a 1/4 inch to about a 1/2 inch. Small, but it's the first time it's been detected there at all, and the significance is what it implies. Clay layers at depth have compressed and haven't rebounded since roughly 2018. Once that happens, that storage capacity doesn't come back. Moving on to enforcement, which this week stopped being about deadlines and started being about money. Building on the well registration push we've tracked in recent weeks, Delta-Mendota set its meter compliance deadline at October 1st and scheduled an August 27th public hearing on a draft penalty structure. The draft is $1,000 per non-compliant or unregistered meter, plus another $1,000 for every 30 days you stay out of compliance. That second part is the one to pay attention to. It repeats every 30 days for as long as you're out. And to their credit, the board also directed staff to build a simplified exemption process. For wells that are genuinely sitting idle, you wouldn't have to meter one you're not using, as long as you tell the agency 30 days before you turn it back on and put a meter on it first. San Antonio Basin went further. Certified warning letters went out on July 13th to landowners who've never registered, each one with a custom parcel map. 30 days to submit your well registration, 60 days for your flow meter compliance form. After that, the next step in their policy is a formal notice of violation. And at Fox Canyon, acting as the Las Posas Valley Watermaster, staff reported that 21 to 22 water management IDs out of roughly 140, about 15%, still haven't turned in the extraction reporting forms. Without those, staff simply cannot calculate allocations, and they're now working with council on enforcement. If you're sitting on one of those, that's a solvable problem today, and a legal one later. Here's the thing. Every one of these agencies would rather have compliance than penalty revenue. The letters and the fee schedules are what happens after the outreach doesn't get there. Next, Vina, where an advisory committee just voted to move the red lines. The committee voted 5-2 to to recommend revising groundwater level minimum thresholds using what they're calling Alternative 2. The mechanics. The threshold becomes the deeper of either 20 feet below the historical low or the level at which 5% of domestic wells in that area would be at risk. In practice, that pulls the regulatory trigger earlier in 16 of 25 monitoring wells. Though it's worth noting, it cuts both ways. In a few polygons with very few domestic wells, the new thresholds would actually sit lower than the 2022 ones. They also voted to recommend removing what's called the non-dry year qualifier from the undesirable results definitions. Right now, an undesirable result can only be triggered after 2 consecutive non-dry water years, which effectively gives drought years a pass. Staff and the Department of Water Resources both recommended dropping it, so impacts get recognized regardless of water year type. An agricultural representative floated a compromise, a rebound test instead of full removal, and the committee ultimately went with removal. Important caveat on all of this. This is an advisory committee. Both recommendations now go to the Vina GSA boards for a final decision, and, if adopted, it would be a formal amendment to the Groundwater Sustainability Plan. So this isn't done, but it's the clearest signal yet of where that basin is heading. Last must know. Westlands says the water is there. The Bureau of Reclamation's Central Valley Project allocation for south of Delta agricultural contractors is sitting at 25%. But Westlands staff reported that Shasta Reservoir inflows are tracking roughly 100,000 acre-feet above the 90% exceedance forecast that allocation was built on. General Manager Allison Febo said the district is advocating daily with reclamation for an increase, and made a point that's worth repeating. The old assumption was that growers don't need more water after June. Under SGMA, that's no longer true. Groundwater is capped now, so surface water late in the season is what keeps you off the well. The board also pre-allocated 15,000 acre-feet of north of Delta supplemental water that hasn't physically moved south yet, expected to come through the Jones pumping plant in September and October. The idea is to let growers use it now, during peak irrigation, to offset pumping. All right, let's talk trends. First trend. Fallowing has stopped being something that happens to you and started being a tool. At Paso Robles, San Luis Obispo County staff reported the county's fallowed land registry has passed 4,000 enrolled acres after a steep uptick that started around March. Staff are hoping it reaches 8,000 against roughly 40,000 irrigated acres in the whole basin. That is a meaningful share of a basin choosing, voluntarily, to stop pumping. The county also launched a small farm assistance program, $55 per acre-foot of estimated savings for farms between 2 and 20 irrigated acres. Read the fine print on that one, though. Enrolling commits the land to stay fallowed through the end of 2039. Public commenters flagged that the long commitment may deter growers who just wanted to register land they're already resting. Elsewhere, Omachumni Hartnell heard the Kosumnes Groundwater Authority is tracking about 2,500 acres of fallowed or removed vineyard. But they're deliberately not baking it into the land use model yet, because they want to see whether that ground comes back or transitions to another crop. East Turlock is finalizing its incentivized fallowing agreements. And Westlands approved the 4 land repurposing projects we previewed last week under the Westside Sub-Basin program. Second trend, and this is a new one on the radar, data centers. Diablo Water District directors reported the City of Oakley held a joint council and planning commission session weighing either extending its moratorium or going to a permanent ban on AI data centers. The district's own position is straightforward. Potable water should be reserved for potable needs, and they've updated their regulations on when developments should be on recycled water instead. Amador Water Agency board members discussed monitoring a potential data center in the Buena Vista area, specifically for second-order effects on water supply, and they took no action, because there's no formal application to respond to yet. And Turlock Irrigation District reported that data center load growth and nuclear power were the dominant topics at the American Public Power Conference this year. Worth watching. None of these is a project on a desk today, but 3 boards raised it unprompted in the same week, and that's usually how something arrives. Third trend, groundwater levels, and the picture is genuinely uneven. YOLO reported July levels averaging nearly 3 feet higher than last year and roughly 31 feet above the drought lows of July 2022, with no wells below those 2022 levels. Westlands reported average subbasin levels rose about 3 feet from spring to spring, with pumping projected right around 300,000 acre-feet against a sustainable yield of 305,000. So, just inside the line. But Kern County Water Agency reported all 6 of its monitored well locations showing middle aquifer declines compared to last year, though still above their 2022 lows. And San Antonio Basin's trend lines are essentially flat. So, recovery in the north and, on the west side, a step backward in Kern and holding steady on the central coast. If someone tells you California groundwater is recovering, the honest answer is that it depends entirely on which basin you're standing in. Last trend. Golden mussel treatment is moving beyond the Friant system. Building on the Friant coverage of the last couple of weeks, Westlands is planning treatment on 2 of its laterals using a copper-based molluscicide with a real-time dashboard tracking water quality and how well it's working. One practical warning from staff. Dead shells can travel downstream and temporarily affect filters and meters at delivery points, so if you're on those laterals, expect some nuisance. Central Coast Water Authority reported mussels found upstream of the Polonio Pass treatment plant, and they're working with the Department of Water Resources, San Luis Obispo County, and Kern County Water Agency on a possible pilot treatment for the coastal branch, with grant funding being pursued to offset the cost. Staff there were direct about the stakes. Without proactive treatment at the pumping plants, they're worried about a catastrophic failure. And Kern County Water Agency continued its agency-wide emergency declaration and pointed growers toward a forum on August 5th at Bakersfield College. Yolo County has now joined Kern, San Joaquin, and Sacramento in declaring a local emergency. There's still no word on a statewide declaration. That's your Sigma Weekly. If you want the full details on every board meeting we covered, head to water1.ai. You can read the complete recaps, and if you want to dig deeper, try ChatGSA. Just ask it anything about your district, and it'll pull up the answers from the latest meetings. I'm your AI host. Stay informed, and I'll see you next week.